Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nourished Child Podcast. Jill here. I am talking with my friend, Sara Dean, today. She is a mindset, business, and leadership coach for moms. You might wonder why I'm having her on this show, but guess what? Today we are talking about the culture of fitness, and I invited Sara to be here because she is a past fitness pro and gym owner. So we are talking about just our culture of fitness or fitness culture, however you want to refer to it, but how it impacts women and children. She talks about what she saw happening to women when she was a fitness pro and when she was the owner of a gym, and specifically how they came in wanting to shrink themselves and how they, as a result, thought of themselves based on their body and on their fitness level. We also talk about how sort of our self-beliefs about our body, our fitness level, our health, how this gets carried out or carried down to our children. We talk about losing the morality around fitness and lean bodies and incorporating more choice with how we want to move our bodies, how we want to be in our bodies. We certainly talk about the pressure to look a certain way as a woman, as a fitness pro, and how just being what she called just regular, in air quotes, attracted more clients to her. She left the fitness industry. You'll learn why. And you will understand by the end of this show the conditioning that we all are subjected to when it comes to the fitness culture and diet culture. So it's a little bit of a different interview for the Nourished Child, but I think it's a very valuable one. Sara is a very real person and has very real impressions about the fitness industry, and I think that's valuable for you to hear about. So without further ado, here is my friend, Sara Dean. Sara, welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast. I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes. Well, we are friends. We've known each other for a long time. I'm interested in your experiences as a former fitness gym owner. But before we get to that, tell everybody what you're doing today, and then we'll dive into your past experiences.
Okay. Can I talk about what I did previously and how it led to what I'm doing today? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I think it's relevant. So I was in the fitness industry for 15 years. I became a personal trainer and then ended up ultimately having my own facility, working almost exclusively with women. I would say almost exclusively with women, but with a few great men. So I worked with a lot of women, many moms, and loved the community that I built there. Really loved being in fitness. It's like always been a personal passion of mine. I did not grow up in fitness, but found it as an adult, and it really just has supported my life in many, many ways. And at a certain point after I had my son, I started recognizing more and more acutely how women talk to themselves about their bodies. And I started realizing that I had created this environment where the women who were coming into my community had really specific goals that always predominantly centered shrinking their bodies. And for a long time, I was like, great, I can help you with that. Like, I felt like I'm useful and this is what I can do. And then I realized that when I was helping women constantly shrink their bodies, I was also aiding and embedding in them, just not giving themselves permission to take up space in all aspects of their lives. And some of the conversations I started hearing were like women who, I'm in Seattle, and so women who were working in these prominent tech roles who were saying things like, well, I don't want to go for this promotion, or I don't want to get this role because I don't want more visibility until I lose 30 pounds. And they were really prioritizing shrinking their body over these other goals where their impact in the world could be so much more significant. And as I started hearing this more and more and became a mother myself, I just started to recognize that I felt like I had built a business that no longer felt aligned with my core values. And so I started in 2016. I started a podcast called The Shameless Mom Academy, and it was not about health and fitness, but it was really specifically tailored to helping women take up space. And so I had that podcast for 8 years, and was so much fun to really dig into how to help women take up space and not center shrinking their bodies for so much of their lives. And that now has evolved into I have a new show that I started earlier last year called Shameless Leadership. So this show is really helping women grow in leadership, evolve in leadership, take up space, use their voice for advanced visibility opportunities. And so it's my journey in the fitness industry was incredibly valuable, and definitely was kind of the setup point for the work that I'm doing now to help women take up all the space and be as loud as they can possibly be.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So why do you think women are so focused on shrinking their bodies?
I think we're conditioned from a really, really young age to not trust our bodies and to start to put things in these buckets of good and bad. And so, like, a flat stomach is good and a not flat stomach is bad, and donuts are bad, and kale is good. And we're taught from this really young age to differentiate and classify things, and there's very little gray area. It's either positive or negative. And so I think some of it's with that. I think some of it comes from looking at how the women around us talk about themselves and about food and about bodies and about exercise. And I think there's also this insidiousness of in our culture in which women have no idea how much we've been trained to focus on our bodies, because as part of a larger system in which when women are focused on their bodies, they don't have the energy and the bandwidth to do other things in the world where they could have bigger impact. So it works well for structures that don't want women to succeed if we're really focused on doing 2 hours of cardio a day, because that means we're probably not moving up in our career 2 hours every day. So there's these systems in place that have been in place for decades that allow certain groups and people to thrive if women are really, really focused on how we look and prioritizing that and making sure that we're quote unquote taking care of it all the time.
Yeah. So what kind of systems are you talking about?
I mean, explicitly the patriarchy.
Yes.
But it's and this impacts men as well. So this isn't just like women are not the only victims of patriarchal structures, but it's systems around what it looks like for a woman to take care of herself and what she should look like. So it's about vanity, it's about aging, it's about anti-aging, it's about bodies, it's about health, it's about being good, and women are supposed to be good. So it's social systems. It crosses over into our family systems, our social systems, and then our health and wellness systems.
I know in my industry, a lot of that sort of shrinking your body, eating healthy air quotes here, folks, being thin as the ideal, we call that diet culture.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that earlier and it went right out of my head, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm always curious about, so when you say it's keeping women back from, taking that 2 hours they might be working out, it's holding them back from pursuing other things where they could have bigger impact in the world. Do you think that holds mothers back from being mothers, from mothering also?
That's a great question. If we aren't taking great care of our bodies, if we're undernourished, what does that do to our energy? If I'm and I can speak from my own personal experience, if I'm undernourished, then I am probably not going to be super excited when my son is like, "Hey mom, you want to go down to the lake and paddleboard?" I'm going to be thinking like, "Oh my gosh,
I'm exhausted.
Maybe just watch a movie."
Yeah.
And I've been in that situation. Where I'm like, oh, I'm just so tired and I haven't had a chance to eat. And I just don't have it in me today. And so I think that's one of the ways when we are either undernourished or we are focusing on the wrong thing in terms of, depleting ourselves and giving so much energy to trying to look and be a certain way, it absolutely impacts our ability to show up for our kids. And it impacts our ability, not just in terms of what we're modeling to them, that we're modeling that this is okay and appropriate and quote unquote normal and acceptable, but it also impacts like what our energy is like around them. Are we able to be upbeat, positive, excited, energetic, able to, spontaneously say yes to something that maybe does take extra energy?
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder about, the listener out there who might be confused because she might be saying, well, wait, we're told that we're supposed to exercise every single day and we're supposed to eat healthy and we're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep and we're supposed to stay off the screens. And, oh, by the way, I'm a working mom, or I'm not a working mom, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I've got 4 kids. So it feels like I'm a working mom.
Yeah.
What do you say to that sort of tension between recommendations and sort of finding ourselves in the middle of this culture that is basically telling us this is what you're supposed to be doing?
Right. This is such a great question. And I've interviewed a handful of people on my, you included, Jill, but a handful of people on my show where we've had this conversation around, it's so conflicting to be like, but wait, I should be healthy though, right?
Yeah.
I should actually exercise. Like, that's not a bad thing. So being part of a system that's like, well, you do want to exercise and take good care of your body and you do want to be conscientious of your nutrition, but knowing like where's the boundary for doing it in a way that is life-giving rather than depleting.
Yeah.
So I think there's that piece. And then I think there's also this piece that in looking at the morality of health, and I can't remember if we talked about this when you were on the show, Jill, but I've had conversations with some other people back when I was hosting the Shameless Mom Academy around the morality of health and like how in order to be good people, which women are constantly, conditioned to be, that we should be good in air quotes, that we need to do all these certain things. And you just listed off a lot of examples of those things. And so we attach morality to health and then we beat ourselves up. Like, I'm not a good person because I don't work out every day or because I don't eat healthy or because I eat whatever the thing is. And then we carry that with us as an internal reflection of who we are and what kind of a person we think we are. Or we judge other people based on their decisions that they make in those realms. And the reality is that doing the best that you can on any given day, depending on what you have access to that day, that's the right decision. And maybe some days that is skipping a workout and taking a nap. Maybe some days that is eating the donut. Like it's looking at how can you have a balanced approach where you're not constantly beating yourself up and you're not subscribing to diet culture messaging that is making you constantly feel less than, or that you can't, that what you want isn't attainable, and that it has to look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's a fitness culture that's putting pressure on all of us women as well?
Yes, of course.
I've got my fitness culture right here on Instagram. My feed is full of women over 50 strength training and eating 130 grams of protein every day. That's my...
Yeah. So those are such good examples. I barely follow anyone. In fact, people will come to me and they'll be like, okay, like who should I follow if I want to be healthy? Again, because like being healthy is a good and appropriate goal. And I'm like, I don't know who to point you to. I was so disenchanted for so long by the health and wellness industry that I unfollowed everyone. I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I think that no matter your age or stage in life, I think that there's absolutely there's absolutely fitness culture that's pervasive in many, many ways. One of the reasons I became so disenchanted with the fitness industry specifically was because it's an industry built by men who serve women very predominantly. And so it's many, and you see this when you walk into almost any gym, unless it's a woman-owned gym, but it's, not, I don't know, 9 out of the 10 trainers on the floor are like guys who are 20 to 35 years old, but they're serving women who are 35 to 65 years old. So the fitness industry was built to be this multi-billion-dollar industry built by men to serve women, to capitalize and weaponize our weak, not our weak, I shouldn't say our weaknesses, but to weaponize our vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that following people who are strength training on Instagram is a bad thing. It doesn't mean that tracking your steps is a bad thing. I think it more means, are you conscientious about what you're seeing and taking in every day? And then is that helpful or harmful to you? So if every time I'm seeing someone on social media, it's someone who has a totally different body type than me, and I see pictures of them doing something and it makes me beat myself up inside, then that's not helpful. That's harmful. If it's someone who's doing something and I'm like, oh, that looks like a really cool exercise, I'm going to try that today when I get to the gym, then that's helpful. So I think it's, constantly weighing how you are and taking responsibility for how you're internalizing what you're seeing and what you're engaging with.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between inspiration and what would the word be? You're inspired, but then it goes to a point where you're feeling badly about yourself.
Right.
Or
it's
you're feeling
demotivating.
Yeah. I was going to say demotivating. And I'm like, is that really the word?
I don't know.
Not sure. But you take it to a point where you're like, okay, I'm inspired by this 60-year-old woman who can do chin pull-ups and, but then at one point, does it get to be, oh, I could never do that. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the body. I think there's a genetic, that's the other thing. I think there's a genetic component to a lot of these individuals who are having, or a medication component. This is the other thing. It's like, you can't really believe what you see online.
It's so tricky.
Yeah. So when we think about the fitness industry and women in general, let's talk mothers. What did you see? What did you notice? What was sort of happening in front of what did you witness?
Yeah. One of the things and this is where the ethical dilemma kind of started for me, is that one of the things we did at my gym was we ran these, they were called transformation programs. For all intents and purposes, they were weight loss programs. So I was like, you're going to have a transformation. You're going to get stronger, like blah, blah, blah. But of course, everyone's like, how much weight will I lose? Like, what size will I be after? Like, if I'm 12 now, will I be an 8 in 2 weeks? So everything was very metric motivated. And I will totally take responsibility for participating in that, and be in the sense that we did weigh-ins, we did measurements, we did before and after pictures. So while it was called a transformation program, and I, especially over time, really tried to make it more about like, get strong and feel great, people were very metric motivated. And what I saw is that we would do these programs a handful of times a year, and people would come in and they'd be super focused and they would meet their goals and they would have these great transformations. And then the program would be over and things would sometimes rapidly, sometimes a little more slowly. Their habits would return to what they were before the program, and their body would return to what looked like before the program. And then they would be like, when's the next program? Oh my gosh, I got to get, back on track, or some sort of language like that. And they would be clamoring for the next opportunity to do another transformation program. And so then we would do one, a month or two later, and they would go back through the cycle again. And over time, over the course of doing this for a number of years and multiple times a year, I would see women who would come in, and it was like the first time they did it, the high was so high. Like, look at me, look what I did. This is amazing. I can't believe I was so dedicated and committed, and I got this great outcome. And then after that, no highs compared to that, because they were carrying guilt with them for letting themselves down by, quote unquote, letting themselves go in between programs. And so they were always thinking back to like, how do I get back to where I was at the end of that first program? Or how do I do a better job not falling off the wagon between programs this time? And it really became this vicious cycle of women being harder on themselves over time, rather than, and not all of the women, but there was definitely some where this was the case, where it was, instead of it fueling healthy habits that lasted, they were on this on and off cycle that became really harmful more than it was helpful. And that was never my intention. My intention was like, you're going to do the program and then these habits will stick. And then if you want to do another program, pick a different goal, or tweak something different,
Yeah.
But my intention was not like, you're going to have a result, then lose that result, and then try to get that result back again over and over and over again, because that's such a futile experience. And what I saw this doing to women's and these moms' self-esteem was this at a certain point. I was like, this is just not ethical. I can't do this anymore. And I tried to do it I'm like, we're not going to do measurements this time. We're going to stop doing weigh-ins. And people didn't want to do it. They're like, that's what I'm here for. Like, I'm here for the measurements. I'm here for the weigh-ins. And it was really tricky. And that's when I was just kind of like, okay, I just don't want to participate in this anymore. It just didn't feel right.
Yeah. How do you suppose that affected their lives outside of that gym in terms of, some of the work you're doing right now, but how do you think that really affected the rest of their lives? I imagine that if you're coming back, you have that first high, your first success, you're coming back and also thinking, what was it about me that first time? Why can't I tap into that person?
Yes. Yeah.
What was going on in my life that allowed me to do this, that, or the other? Maybe there were no children. Maybe there were, at that time, or maybe there were different financial circumstances. Maybe, who knows? Mental health, who knows?
Or just their body being in a different place. Like, I mean, these are women in their 40s and 50s. So like
metabolism.
Anyone who's been in their 40s and 50s, it's like whatever your body's doing on any given day, like who knows where my estrogen is at?
Yes, exactly.
I'm probably 5 pounds heavier than yesterday.
I know. I did all this workout and I gained 5 pounds.
Right. Yeah. What I saw it do outside, what I saw really consistently is what was happening in the gym was happening outside of the gym. So if women were coming in and they were getting stronger and they were feeling great and they were doing things that they didn't think were possible in the gym, they were doing that outside the gym. And so one of my favorite populations to work with was women in their 50s who hadn't done, most of our workouts were boot camp style workouts. And so women who hadn't done that kind of workout before, they hadn't come in and done high intensity work, and they would come in and definitely be a little nervous starting out. But then, a few weeks, couple months in, they're doing push-ups on their toes and they're doing burpees and they're like running up and down this hill outside our gym. And they just feel this sense of strength and power that they've never experienced before. And that was carrying over into other aspects of their lives. They would come in and be like, oh my gosh, I did this presentation at work and it went so well. And I'm going to ask for a raise. And it was just like, it was pervasive across their life. The same thing happened when things weren't going well. So when they would go through a program, get a great result, and then and then lose that result over time, regardless of what the circumstances were, they would come in and it wasn't just like, oh, I haven't kept up on my exercise or I haven't kept up on my nutrition. It was also like, and I'm just, I'm always in a bad mood and I'm not feeling great with my partner and like work is horrible. And it was just like, it kind of all matched across the board. Based on how they felt they could show up with their body. And so and again, it was seeing that over time and making that connection where I felt this huge sense of responsibility to figure out how to do things in a different way so that I could help women take up space, so that no matter what the state of your body is on any given day, that you can be in a situation and feel like you deserve to speak up for yourself and stand up for yourself and advocate for yourself and go after the things that you want. And that shouldn't have anything to do with whether or not I had steel cut oats for breakfast or a donut or if I did a workout today or not.
Right. But don't you think a lot of like that motivation to go out there and slay it in the world, take up space, is related to confidence?
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I feel like a lot of women and girls, teenage girls, confidence matters a lot in terms of informing what you're willing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
How you're willing to put yourself out there in the world.
Definitely. And I think when you can have the confidence to be comfortable with yourself in any moment, in any state, regardless of circumstances, then when we have things that aren't working out the way we want them to. So, we don't work out for X amount of weeks, or we haven't had the opportunity to keep healthier food in our house for however long, that when we have those seasons in our life, that we don't take those as a reflection of who we are as a person and our value and our worth, that instead we can recognize, there's been a lot of things on my plate recently. And as a result of that, these are the things that have, not gone the way that they usually do, or these are the things that I haven't been able to prioritize. And that those can be neutral observations instead of really harsh criticisms of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of self-acceptance, it sounds like, and self-love.
Yeah.
how do you, is it possible for the fitness industry in general to, have more of a maybe gentler, kinder impact on women? And if so, what needs to change?
Such a good question. So since I left the industry, what I have seen in the few places where I keep tabs on things, what I have seen is a lot of women who stayed in the industry who did the opposite of me. Instead of I was just like, I'm out. And women who chose to stay and acknowledge that the status quo is not working. This is unacceptable. The people that we serve, largely middle-aged women, deserve better. And those women their children deserve better, because however we're supporting these women is how they're going to then in turn support their children.
Right.
And so there are women who are doing some really incredible work to change systems and change the narrative. And I think that there's been a lot of progress on that. I sold my gym in 2018. It's now 2025. In the last 7 years, I think that there's been, and some of this had started as I was on my way out, but I think there's been progress in that area. And I will say that I recently joined a Pilates studio, and it's kind of my first venture back into public exercise in a really long time.
Yeah.
Because I work out at home and I'm like a big dork.
Same.
I'm like, I love making my own workouts. It's great.
Yeah.
And listen to a podcast and that's fine. But I was having all this back and hip pain. And so I was like, okay, I should go to Pilates. And I go into the studio that's a woman-owned studio, male and female teachers. They're all phenomenal, but the messaging is so uplifting, and it's never about shrinking your body. It's never about one type of thing being idealized over another. Even in exercise, in demonstrating exercises or giving us choices in exercises, it's like, you can do it this way or that way, whatever feels right for you today. It's never this is the better way or this is the harder. They might identify that one way is more challenging, but they're not idealizing that one thing is better than another. And that language, I think, is really refreshing. One of the women in particular talks a lot about some of the ways that the machinery is set up. And she'll say things like, if your thighs are a little thicker like mine are, then you might be more comfortable this way. And I noticed it right away. And she's, I think, in her 20s. And I noticed it right away the first time I heard her speak like that, because I thought, oh my gosh, she's not saying all of you who have big legs,
right? Right.
She's just like, if you're like me, I find this to be more comfortable. And it's so relatable in the way that she says it. And that kind of language, I think, is really, really helpful. So I think that there's been growth. I don't think it's everywhere, but I think you can absolutely find it. And that's, I think, really, really encouraging.
Yeah. I think also too, just from an online standpoint, I exercise by myself too, but I'll watch a YouTube video or I'll get on the Peloton app and do something there. Variety of sizes of people, but it is harder in that industry to see a variety of body shapes and sizes.
Well,
you see it here and there, but
I will tell you, from 2010 to 2013, I was in a business coaching group led by 2 male coaches. So it was for people who owned fitness businesses, gyms and et cetera. And it was run by 2 men who were in their 30s. And their favorite social media game was to put up a post that said, because it got so much traction, that said, do fitness professionals need to look the part? And the conversation just would always devolve quickly into, obviously, if you can't walk the walk, what does that say about you? Blah, 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 blah. Just these horrible generalizations and stereotypes. And it was so disgusting to me. And then they would use that as an example in our meetings. They'd be like, so this is how we're getting a lot of traction on social media. And I was like, this is so bad. And again, I became a mom in 2012. And that's when I was like, I cannot participate in this anymore. That was when that stuff, I just really I could no longer just kind of turn the other way.
Right.
So I think that there historically has been a lot of pressure for people in the industry to look a certain way. What I will say though, as someone who has been in the environment of being one of 10 trainers in a gym and being knowing what people go through to make that selection, is that I was in the biggest gym I ever worked in. I was the most booked female trainer. And the comment I always got, which I didn't love, but was, you're just regular. And so I wanted to work out with someone who just looks like a normal woman.
Yeah.
And basically I've never had a six pack in my life. Like I've never had, like, I'm just very like average, and which gives me many benefits. I mean, in terms of, having thin privilege and being treated like someone who is in a thin body, but I'm like a thin person who's like anywhere between like an 8 and a 12 size, depending on where I'm at in life. And most trainers, women trainers are, like a 2, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
And so I'm very average. And what I think that people appreciate, what my clients appreciated, why people sought me out, was they were like, we just want someone who's like normal and, relatable, and not necessarily someone who I think a lot of women don't want to stand next to someone who's in their like perfect Lululemon outfit with their six pack and their
Yeah. I do. I work, I have 4 kids, and my older 3 are girls. They're in their 20s now, but I do, that's one of the things I have like in the back of my mind, the worry of, because I know that I've raised them with a very neutral attitude around bodies and food, and no dieting, no, just very sort of, I would say, middle of the road, factual, but very neutral.
Yeah.
And when they went off to college and subsequently, in their young adulthood, their messaging that they get now is so different.
Yeah.
Than what I was intentional.
When they got at home. Yeah.
Yeah. What I was very intentional to avoid. Because, back in the day when they were younger, I was working with a lot of eating disorder children and teens. And so it was very much on my mind to be very careful with my language. And now, none of them are, all of them exercise regularly in what I would say are moderate ways.
Yeah.
But what I have noticed is that they do compare themselves to what they're seeing online, or, a friend from high school who's now a fitness star on social media and doing all these deals. And, so it's really hard to escape the pressure from the fitness industry.
Yeah, it is. I have a son, and it's been shocking to me some of the things I've heard him say. And again, has been someone who's been so conscientious and careful. And some of the things I've heard him say about his body from a very young age, like standing in front of the mirror at age 5, asking me how to get abs. It's like, how are we related?
Yeah.
This is the one thing I've tried so hard. Like, I will never, ever idealize abs.
Yes.
And here you are asking me at age 5.
It's funny, huh?
It's wild how these things come up, and no matter how protective we are as parents, it's part of the cultural conversation. And so the education that we have to do in order for them to be able to hear and filter things in a way that is healthy and safe for them.
Yeah. I often, I recognize the tension with my clients too, who exercise and are trying to be healthy as role models for their children.
Right.
The adage of let them see you do what you want them to grow up doing.
Right.
So you're out there, you're going to bed on time, you're out there, you're exercising, you're trying to eat a nutritious diet, right? You're trying to be moderate around things like sweets and alcohol and all these things. And and then at the end of the day, your child wants abs, or your children are comparing themselves to somebody whose body, they're never going to have that body. They don't even have the gene pool for that body.
Right.
So I can see the frustration and the pressure. So sort of to wrap this conversation up, what advice would you give moms or mothers who are feeling pressure from the fitness industry, from just our cultural climate around fitness and bodies and women looking a certain way? What do you have to offer them?
There's a couple things. One of the things that I've found to be helpful is learning more and more about diet culture. And I actually have worked with a number of women at this point where when I kind of start to explain to them what diet culture is, if it's unfamiliar to them, there's a bit of rage that appears where they're like, wait, excuse me, what? I've been trained and conditioned to think and believe what? And so when we can start to understand our conditioning, I think there can be this pushback where we're suddenly like, I am unwilling to stand for that anymore. So I think that having that understanding of why you've been conditioned a certain way, why some of your internal messaging and dialogue is the way that it is, I think can be really helpful in starting to combat it and recognize like, oh my gosh, like who's winning when I talk to myself this way? There's systems that are winning and I'm losing and I'm no longer willing to stand for that. So that's one part of it. I think the other part of it is looking for the evidence that supports looking for evidence that supports the habits, but not the evidence that you think you should be looking for. So the evidence that we think we should be looking for is I ate healthy and I exercised, and what did that do to my body? Did I lose weight? Did I drop a size? Do my pants fit differently? Like these kind of vanity related metrics and goals, which are not all bad, but if that's the only reason that we're doing it, if that's the only evidence we're collecting, I think that there can be a point of diminishing returns in terms of how valuable that can be for us. The other evidence we can be collecting is how does this make me feel? And I'm sure you talk about this endlessly, but for me at a certain point, like exercise did for a long time exist in my life because it was about how many calories can I burn and how much sweat can I get in and like how long of cardio can I do and how many like levels on the stair climber, like these metric driven things that were kind of ambiguous, but meaningful to me in weird self-obsessive ways. And shifting from that over time, and especially after becoming a mom and my time being so much more limited, to recognizing that on the days that I exercise, I'm more patient, I'm more calm, I'm more creative, I'm more productive, like all these other things. One of the things for me specifically, I exercise first thing in the morning. And when I do that, my anxiety is lower. I have anxiety and ADHD, and I notice that it helps me focus more. So for me, looking at like, okay, if I want to have a good day, this is something I can do to have a good day. I don't need to do this because it might mean that my clothes fit better tomorrow. Maybe it'll mean that, maybe it won't. But I can use this as a source of power for having a good day or for having more energy or for me, a lot of times movement is related to processing emotion. And so if I'm thinking about something, worrying about something, feeling stuck on something, if I go for a walk or a run or get on the Peloton, I can process. So using my exercise and nutrition as tools to help me feel a certain way is really, really helpful. And so I talk a lot about that with my 12-year-old so that he can understand that, oh, okay, like this makes us feel a certain way. That it's, and also for him, like relating it to, for him, what part of the reward of getting stronger is being better at baseball, which is this total obsession. And so those, I think looking at the other evidence that helps us, that's motivating to us, rather than looking at this kind of conventional metrics that we have been trained to track. That may or may not actually make, 10,000 steps on my hips doesn't feel good. And so what does feel good?
On my
and
knees.
That would be my last thing would be like, what does feel good in terms of exercise?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the other thing is that we choose exercise based on what's trendy and what's going to get us a specific vanity result or what's supposedly going to get us a certain vanity result. And I think at the end of the day, do the exercise that feels good. I had a personal training client for years who I saw 3 days a week. She was always in the worst mood. And every time I'd see her, I'd just be like, oh gosh, here we go. And she came in one day so excited because she had taken a dance class. And I was like, tell me all about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's just like so excited about this. So then like a week later, she comes back. She's gone again. She loved it. Then she comes back after her third lesson. She's like, I think I'm going to start going twice a week. I was like, you should absolutely do that twice a week. A couple weeks after that, she's like, I think I'm going to start going 3 times a week. Maybe I'll only see you once and I'll go. And I was like, yes, don't see me at all. Go dancing 5 days a week. Like do the thing that you like. That her life was so much better taking Arthur Murray dance classes than coming to see me at the gym. I was like, go to Arthur Murray dance classes all day long.
Yeah.
So I think that doing the thing that feels good is the right thing for your body. It's not like, what's the thing that burns the most calories, that gets me the abs, that gets me, all those kinds of things.
And that's a good message for parents of children too, because when it feels good and it's fun, then kids want to do it.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I use exercise as a management tool
Yeah.
for very similar things. Manage my anxiety, get my head clear for the day, feel like I got a quick win.
Yeah.
Right when I get up.
Yeah.
Although now I've gotten into the habit of having my cup of coffee and watching the news first.
Oh,
and
I have to have the coffee first too, but I try not to watch the news first. Yeah.
I got to get my 30 minutes in so I know what's going on in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, Sara, it was so fun to have you on the show.
So
Thank you
fun.
so much for giving your insight, because I think, being a gym owner in the past and walking away from it and just sharing your story, I'm sure is touching a lot of parents out there who are listening to this show. If they want to find out more about what you're doing today and even tap into some of your old podcast episodes, how can they get in touch with you?
Yes. So all my work is at saradean.com. So that's SARA, no H, SARADEAN.com. I'm on Instagram at Sara Dean Speaks. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I always put LinkedIn on there, but I'm newly excited about LinkedIn. I know many people.
I'm always excited about
many
LinkedIn.
people are not excited about LinkedIn, so I'm a big nerd when I talk about it.
Oh, really?
And then the podcast is currently called Shameless Leadership.
Yeah.
If you go to any podcast platform, just look for Shameless Leadership. The first 900 episodes, the first 900 episodes are the Shameless Mom Academy. And then we rebranded it, but kept it on the same channel. Okay. So episode 900 and above is all Shameless Leadership. Okay. So you can find my episode with Jill and all sorts of topics related to motherhood if you just go to Shameless Leadership. Again, 0 to 900, Shameless Mom Academy, and then 900 and above is Shameless Leadership.
Wonderful.
And I think those are all the places.
Awesome. Well, I will put those in the show notes and the links. And thank you again.
Thank you so much,
always
Jill.
Fun to see you.
So fun. Thank you.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that show. It's a lot to think about, right? The conditioning piece of it, I think, is something to really reflect on, not only just for ourselves. How have we been conditioned by the fitness industry, by diet culture? How have we been conditioned? And how might we be participating in conditioning our own children? Something to reflect on. I hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, and you're on your app, make sure you give The Nourished Child a follow, a review, and if you have the moment to write something, that would be awesome. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next 2 weeks. Be sure to give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.